But what I realized there was that there is a value to being Birbal, right? Being a strategic advisor, giving a lot of words of wisdom. But at the end of the day, it's also about executing that on the ground and getting things done, which is where the real value gets translated, right?
If we can do this, why can't we do this for what we believe in or what we want to start as a business? But I think sustainability is a thing again which is sort of non-negotiable, like it or not. It's something that everybody who's sort of producing something or building something must look at. For us, how we are looking at sustainability is a little different. To some extent, our thought process is similar to what Elon Musk at Tesla has said that the car really has to drive fast and it has to perform, and then by the way, it is also electric.
So that is the process that we are driving towards, right? We say, is there a possibility of getting sustainability in while keeping that value proposition alive?
Hello, everyone. This is Shweta Dalmia, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Climbapreneur Show. I'm so sure today's episode is going to bring all the entrepreneurs out there so much value. It's going to educate you, it's going to motivate you. Our guests today are really amazing. They had earlier started Momo, which was acquired by ShopClues, and now they have created Flatheads. So they talk about their journey of creating Flatheads, they talk about their experiences. We had quite an insightful conversation. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about future of e-commerce. We talked about how can sustainable fashion penetrate more in the market, and challenges one face while incorporating sustainability, and a lot of other things as well. So do not miss this episode, and let's get started. So today we have with us Utkarsh and Ganesh, founders of India's first bamboo sneakers, founders of Flatheads. They are serial entrepreneurs. And today's episode is also special, because it's one of our first podcasts with two guests, and I'm so excited. So welcome to the Climbpreneur Show, guys.
Hi Shweta, this is Utkarsh. Really happy to be part of the Climapreneur show and excited.
Hi, Shweta. Great to be here. This is Ganesh, and yeah, looking forward to engaging discussion today.
Okay, so we'll start with your entrepreneurial journey. So talk about when your journey started and how has your journey been.
Okay, so for me, journey has been in three parts. One is becoming aware that I want to change something, and this happened early in my career. I am actually an engineer, but at some point I decided to study further. And when I was looking for what I want to study, I came across design, and I applied for the design program at IIT Bombay. And one of the things that struck me was that the course content or the course curriculum said that if you are somebody who's dissatisfied with the way the world is around you, and you want to change something, then this is probably the right education for you. So this is when I was kind of the first time I kind of felt aware that yes, I'm sort of dissatisfied with a lot of things. The second part is, of course, the skill building and trying. So I tried my hand at entrepreneurship a couple of times. I worked as a freelance product designer for a while. Didn't work for me. I started something with baby products, but the ecosystem just wasn't there, and both my ventures sort of went down sliding. In 2013, actually, I met Ganesh. 2011, I met him. We started working together. And this was the third part of the journey where we actually became aware that, we really can change something, or we really can sort of take to entrepreneurship full time. And this is when we started Momo. Momo was, as you know, first of its kind, pay with your phone. When you eat out, shop, and commute, that was our go-to in terms of what we want to do, build a cashless economy. And 2013 we started. We raised some venture funding also, and we grew this to a large initiative where we had like 1 million subscribers and transactions going through our platform on an everyday basis. So this is when I feel that the journey was completed to some extent, or we found the fit where the customer is actually accepting, or we have been able to actually build something that is valuable in the Indian ecosystem. So in some ways, this is like a three-part journey. Ganesh, maybe you want to take over.
Sure. Uh, so I am an engineer as well, and Utkarsh and I were together in college when he was doing his masters in design and I was doing my bachelor's. And since then, so my goal was always to look at business and building a business, right? So that was a top of my mind. What I noticed was that once I did my MBA, I realized that strategy is something that I really wanted to do. Where thinking about what is the best way to grow a business, the best way to solve problems from a chief executive kind of a perspective was something that really kicked me up. So I joined Bain and Company, which is a strategy consulting firm, and was working with them, working with CXOs across the Indian ecosystem, corporate ecosystem, working with them and giving strategic advice. But what I realized there was that there is a value to being birbal, right? Being a strategic advisor, giving a lot of words of wisdom. But at the end of the day, it's also about executing that on the ground and getting things done, which is where the real value gets translated, right? So while Birbal has his role to play, it is Akbar who is actually getting his hands dirty and doing
Yeah.
things on the ground. Which is when I said, okay, maybe there is a entrepreneurial stint that needs to happen uh, rather than just being an entrepreneur across corporate. And that's when I met Utkarsh. It just happened to be right timing and the right partner, and both of those things worked out, which is when we kicked off on our entrepreneurial journey. It has been a fantastic journey so far in terms of realizing that objective of getting your hands dirty and building something from scratch. We have done that with Momo, and now we are doing that with Flathead. So in that sense, it has been quite a fulfilling journey so far. Yeah.
It's actually kind of beautiful, and it seems like that, everything just happened at the right point of time. Like, you guys met at the right point of time, and like somewhere it's a perfect team.
It is. So we actually parted ways. Ganesh went off to US to study, and we actually met after 15 years at Honeywell, where we were working together on an entrepreneurial, building a new business for India at Honeywell. This is when Ganesh one day remarked to me that if we can do this, why can't we do this for what we believe in or what we want to start as a business? And this is when sparks actually flew and we sort of took the plunge.
So, like, why did you create it Flatheads in the first place? What was the idea behind it?
Okay, so Flatheads actually in 2016 we got acquired by Shocklose, and this was our first sort of entree into e-commerce. It was also a realization that how the world is changing and how the ecosystem is being built. This is where we sort of started thinking that yes, I mean, if you have some idea or some product, then it will become more and more easier to take it across to the consumers. So we actually started looking for a area that we wanted to solve. And for me, footwear is a category that I have always been interested in. I have been obsessed about it actually. I own tons of shoes, and for some reason, which I really can't fathom, but I always wanted to understand what is it that makes a perfect shoe. So it was a little bit of inner passion drive that sort of pulled me towards this. And when I shared this with Ganesh, he immediately put his. So the way it works for me and Ganesh is that we have a little bit of a right brain, left brain combination. We are both first principles thinkers, and though we are not from the footwear industry, we said that this is something that has not seen a disruption for quite some time. And customer lifestyle is going across a big change. A lot of people are tending to wear more casuals. People used to wear khakis and cotton trousers to work. Now they are all wearing jeans or even shorts, and the footwear really hasn't kept pace. So, what is it that is going to make the footwear of the future? So, this was something that was heavy on my mind. And when I sort of lobbed this over to Ganesh, he had some interesting perspective as well. Ganesh?
From my perspective, the market is the driver for a lot of things that eventually should become big, right? So when I looked at the footwear market after the conversation with Utkarsh, what we realized is that India is the second largest consumer and producer of footwear in the world, right? So the market is as large as it gets, if you will, right? But India in general is a brand-starved country. We don't have enough brands that actually have a persona, actually have a USP, actually have an emotional connect to the consumer, right? Most of the brands, at least in the footwear space, are very much functional, right? Tikta hai, it is good enough and it will last you is typically the statement that people make. There is not much innovation that has happened in this space in a while. And if we can build a good niche uh, yeah, with a strong positioning, at least in the lifestyle and casual space, there can be a big enough play, is what we realized, right? So we took up that mantle and decided that okay, so there is a clear gap in the casual footwear space where people have started dressing casually, but there is no casual shoe that you can wear to work and wear across for about 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And that is something that we can actually build, and the market is big enough for the urban workforce and the urban tribe to take over and actually build the market to almost $100 million over the next 7 to 8 years. So that was the thought process there.
So you found a market in the gap actually.
Yep.
Okay, so like what do you think, like how important is the passion in the journey of creating something?
Definitely, yes. I would say, to my mind, passion is almost everything. It's the thing that really moves you. And without this drive and energy, it's very difficult that you probably can make something happen. I mean, you can have a lot of ideas, but something that gets you sort of pushing forward for your idea is actually your passion.
From my perspective, it's a no-brainer. Um, uh, I mean, if you are entrepreneurs dedicating the decade of your life for building something from scratch, unless there is passion, you cannot sustain and you cannot have the conviction to, drive it through to whatever objective you set for yourself. So, in that sense, passion is non-negotiable, right? That is the first thing that you need to have, and it has to sustain.
So true. So, like, you guys have been into e-commerce now for a quite long period of time. So, you have seen this industry, I would say, in a lot of phases, like as you call it, e-commerce 1.0, and then you say e-commerce 2.0. So, how has the idea of sustainability in this entire journey, have changed? For example, now we see a lot of brands, say Adidas, Nike, coming up with sustainable product lines. So, what do you think with e-commerce sustainability idea is prevailing?
I think sustainability and e-commerce, I think I don't know. E-commerce actually helps you to tell the story in some ways. It's easier to tell the story, but I think sustainability is a thing again which is sort of non-negotiable. Like it or not, it's something that everybody who's sort of producing something or building something must look at. For us, how we are looking at sustainability is a little different. We feel that okay, fundamentally your product or your creation has some value to offer to the customer, and that is really supreme. We must try, and so when we are actually building flatheads, a sneaker, it's one of the super polluting industries. But we feel that people will only take to it if they can find like something fantastic, something that really wows them away. To some extent, our thought process is similar to what Elon Musk at Tesla has said, that the car really has to drive fast and it has to perform, and then by the way, it is also electric. The same way is what we feel is that in building a sneaker, though it's a very polluting kind of an industry, unless people find the wow with your sneaker, they are not going to adopt it. And we believe that sustainability is part and parcel of the thing. It is not something that we want to separately call out and say we are building sustainable footwear. We are building great footwear, and you should just buy it because it is great footwear. And of course, you will save the money. So that's essentially how we are thinking about sustainability.
So I remember Ganesh, like you telling that being sustainable or being eco-friendly is a process, and you will get there. Like you don't need to do everything at one point of time, but slowly and slowly you can shift towards that. So, what is your perspective on building flatheads? and like kind of integrating sustainability into it over a period of time?
Yeah. So, from if you look at it from first principles itself, right? First thing to crack is whether the market really needs the casual footwear that you're trying to make, right? So, when we looked at what materials are being used in the footwear versus what is the ideal material for an Indian tropical climate, the first thing we realized was, you wear t-shirts on the uppers, which keeps you extremely comfortable in the tropical climate that you're in. But when you look at your shoes, it's it's got three layers. It's stuffy. Your feet are actually 3-4 degrees hotter than what your rest of your body is. You're always sweaty in your feet. It's in general a suboptimal experience, right? So first thing, if we have to solve that, can we actually make t-shirts for your feet, right? That was the thought process. And then from there, what came out was something like a bamboo as a fiber, which is naturally cool. It is moisture wicking. It is antimicrobial. It is something that will give a very good skin feel when you're wearing it even sockless, and it translates to almost that feeling of a t-shirt. Was the thing that we first got into. Now, bamboo happens to be sustainable, right? It's a lot more friendly than the synthetic fabrics that normally go into shoes. So that is the process that we are driving towards, right? We say, is there a possibility of getting sustainability in while keeping that value proposition alive, right? While keeping that value proposition very strong. Similarly, on the rest of the shoe as well, which is the insoles and the soles, we are also trying to figure out, can we keep the value of comfort and can we keep the value of not compromising on the shock resistance and the durability of the shoe. Can we incorporate sustainable materials into the product itself? So that's the way we think about it. You don't get to 100% sustainability on day one. It is something that happens as you go along, and as long as you have a conscious thought process on making that happen every day as you improve your sneaker, you will get there.
So, like, what are your kind of biggest challenges when you're trying to go, sustainable or trying to go eco-friendly?
So, couple of challenges here. One is that so the first thing is that we believe that true sustainability is only possible when you have a complete sort of circular closed loop kind of a system. And while a lot of brands will use sustainability more as a appeal to the customer, we feel that it's not really true. So the first thing that we are actually trying to solve for is what we can do that will create this complete circular thing. One of the challenges that we face, for example, uh, people want shoes in different colors. Now, dyeing the fabric or dyeing the yarn is actually a very sort of not so good process, and it can create a lot of non-eco-friendly kind of situation. So how do you get? On the other hand, one of the challenges is that if you use only vegetative dyes, then you can only get certain number of colors. So one of the challenges we are actually battling is how to solve the problem that you use vegetative dyes, but you can actually get great colors that people would love to wear on their shoes. Similarly, in general, with the Indian ecosystem, Indian manufacturing ecosystem, I would say two or three challenges. One is being able to vibe with a startup in terms of how fast and how quick the stuff has to be produced. The second thing is to be able to build high quality and premium stuff with the sustainability angle is something that the ecosystem also has to evolve around. We have had some good wins with that, I would say. Especially in the COVID situation, we found a lot of manufacturers who were actually looking for work, and they vibed well with us. And this is how our bamboo sneaker actually is produced during the COVID time, when we had time to go back to the drawing board and change a few things around, and then actually get the ecosystem to support us. So yeah, I think these were a couple of challenges we sort of found, and yes, the sneaker is out here now.
So, like, what do you think that, how can, say, sustainable fashion sort of penetrate more in the market, and how can it be more accessible and affordable?
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is, first thing you need to figure out, especially in the early days, right? for any brand who is new into the market, building trust is very, very critical, right? You need to get the customer to believe that you are, you are genuine and you are talking what is real, and you're not trying to, fake it as such, right? So in that sense, for example, in Flatheads, when we looked at how do we build trust in the early days, one of the key things was getting people to try the shoes and believe that what we are saying in terms of comfort and in terms of the proposition that we are trying to put out there is actually real. So we did a lot of road shows with customers. We found this early tribe of entrepreneurs who by definition are looking for new ways to do things and new things, willing to experiment. So we went to the entrepreneur tribe and we told them, hey, you know what, this is a sneaker that will keep you on your toes for your entire day, and you should try it out, and it is super comfortable and super lightweight. And that started resonating. So there is a beachhead there. Similarly, when you talk about sustainability, one of the very emotionally connected communities out there is the vegan community, right? They are very value driven, in value system driven rather, in terms of veganism. Our sneakers just happen to be vegan, right? We engineered it for sustainability, and incidentally it is also vegan, right? So if you can catch that beachhead market and say, get them to believe in the product and believe that we are actually doing what is matching with their value system, then you can have an evangelist in your early consumer who will go and tell the world that, hey, this is real and this is happening. It is not it is not a pipe dream. At the same time, it is not super premium or super luxury. It is still affordable at the price point where they are selling in terms of value. So that's that is the key challenge for early stage people to bring that message into the market. As long as you stay real, it can happen, and it is very doable.
Well said. So, like, I read like somewhere you talked about e-commerce 2.0, which was actually the D2C model that's coming up like right now. So, with e-commerce 2.0, what do you think is the future of the multi-vendor platforms? Multi-vendor e-commerce platforms, actually, I would say.
Utkarsh, you want to take that, or should I?
Okay, so I think both of us can speak. I think that in terms of e-commerce 2.0, what I feel is that in some ways the first slew of things was just having an online store now. Eventually, I think it is going to boil down where, uh, in normal retail, people actually look for something that they want and they seek out brands, they seek out malls, or how do you say, retail formats that actually serve them. And I think that in e-commerce 2.0, the same revolution is going to take place. It will be a lot more value and brand driven, or story driven, if you will. So, for example, I feel that the timing has come where different tribes will start associating with different retail formats. Earlier, it was like one store, one horizontal where everything is there. The second version probably was one vertical where you find all your needs. But now I think e-commerce, with e-commerce 2.0, the time has come when the tribes will sort of take to formats, or tribes will take to online stores, which in some ways I feel are like the multi vendors are actually like the malls, or they are like the departmental stores of yesterday, kind of thing. Ganesh, you want to add something here?
Yep. If you look at it, 1.0 was more creating access and convenience, right? So when you look at the Flipkarts and the Amazons of the world, uh, they are actually creating a channel which is promising a large selection, and promising convenience of home delivery and COD, for example. Also, they are promising a good bargain, right? So the reason why you will choose this channel as as an adopter is because it is giving you a better deal than what is out there in the offline space, right? So that was the first cut of e-commerce 1.0. Now that platform is proven and it is already there for everybody to access, The next set is all about differentiation, all about what is your unique proposition to the customer. It is about finding those niches where emotional connects and, as Utkarsh said, stories are more important, and people will start associating themselves with those propositions, right? So that is e-commerce 2.0, and that is the next decade of e-commerce that you will see in India, where people are also in a space where they can, they are able to differentiate between what is available at a sub 1,000 rupee price point versus what is available in the premium space, and why they should go and buy that premium is the next set of changes that are coming now as Web 2.0 happens, as e-commerce 2.0 happens, and that's the journey that we are poised for in the next decade. We are incredibly privileged to be part of that, and you will see how this will pan out in the next decade. It's a very exciting time for brands across categories to be built in India.
So, like, like right now we have a lot of small sustainable brands that are coming up. And, like, what advice would you give them to hack the early stage marketing, particularly when most of them are bootstrapped? Because we have often heard that e-commerce takes a lot of cash, there's a lot of cash that goes into marketing. So, how to, like, get around with all these things? Because you have successfully built, I would say, two major businesses. So, what is your take on that?
In terms of building customer, see, there are two or three things, right? Number one, you need to create awareness first that you actually exist in the category that you're trying to play in. It doesn't matter which category you're in, right? um, First is the awareness building in the beginning, in the growth hack stage, comes through actually staying as close to the consumer as possible. In our case, what we did was, when there were road shows that we created, we found these entrepreneurs who were in, all the WeWorks of Bangalore and the WeWorks of Delhi. Then we found people who are in IT parks, which is the next set of audiences. And both Utkarsh and I were part of the road shows. We were there talking to the consumer, getting the pulse of what's going on, what they need to believe, and accordingly tweaking our communications, tweaking our product to make that proposition happen, right? So there is no substitute to actually going and talking to the consumer and getting things out there. In fact, before starting as well, Utkarsh will talk about the whole man watching thing that we did. It was a long journey before we actually launched our first shoe itself, right? So that is one thing that is non-negotiable, that you have to definitely do. Right? Once that trust is built, then you make those people who are, early buyers and early adopters of your brand to go and talk to other people about it. So you create referrals, you create incentives, you create uh, uh, a perception of a community that they are part of, and hence that community has to grow, and they become part owners of that communication, of that process of growing the brand, and that's how you can move to the next stage of growth.
So, yeah, no, so like Ganesh said, one of the things that we did before we actually launched was we spent a lot of time doing some observational studies. So we spent almost like 7, 8 months just looking at people how they are associating with their shoes and sneakers. We went to workplaces, we went to cafes, we went about observing how people are dressing, what they are wearing, why they are wearing what they are wearing. We spent some time on bus stops and public places trying to understand this. So this actually gave us a lot of deep insights into how our shoes should be. So that was the story. Now, if you look at the early stage startups, yes, it is discovery is always a very expensive thing, and letting people know that you are out there and you are solving this is very difficult. So I feel that early stage startups need to do a lot of collaborations. This is not something you can actually completely build out on your own. Of course, there is marketing and there is growth hacks, but being able to partner with people is very important. And the partnerships could be on all fronts. They could be on the tech front, they could be on the discovery front. Actually, I feel that while a lot of the tech part of the collaboration, or enabling e-commerce or enabling e-commerce companies has been solved to a large extent by tech, but the discovery piece really hasn't been solved very well. and I think it is still very expensive for people to go and put out their stories. So this is where I think some interesting collaborations will happen. Even like Climapreneur or the platform that you are talking about is something that we feel is very valuable to sort of enabling the e-commerce in general, and allowing unique brands or unique stories to sort of flourish.
That's actually good, and I think there's a point to it that a lot of thing happens offline, because but now we feel that everything is happening online, even marketing and everything. But there's a lot of crowd, I would say, that is to be tackled offline as well, and there's a whole new space offline as well. Okay. So my next question to you would be: so what were your setbacks while building Momo, and how those learnings sort of helped you while creating Flathead?
Uh, in terms of setbacks, I would say that when we started Momo, one of the things that we had to really figure out, that both of us were, we had already become senior. So when we started a tech platform, we were no longer coding, or our ability to build tech was no longer there because new platforms had come. We had never built uh, Android app or a iOS app. So when we actually wanted to hire our first developer, we actually didn't know how to interview that person, or what to ask him during that interview. So getting the right team in the first place is something that we need to be very very conscious about. A lot of entrepreneurs think that, okay, I can move the world, I can change everything, but without the right capability and being able to judge the right set of people who can actually contribute to the vision is something that is hard. So this was very hard for us till we actually looked into the younger networks that we had, and we built a collaboration with somebody who actually helped us find the right tech people. This was like a big no starter for us. The second challenge, of course, I personally found that when we started to get to marketing, how to how to combine the both online as well as offline models, building some kind of BTL, below the line kind of marketing channel, which tells your early stage story, or your first time when you're going onto the ground. So these were some of the challenges. I think with Flatheads we have incorporated both these things, which means when we started, we made sure that we know exactly what it takes. We sort out and we look within our network and extended networks to find the right set of people, the first 3 or 4 people who will sort of come together and help us build this shoe that we have been thinking about, dreaming about. We hired somebody from the International Center, Indian Center for Natural Fibers at NID, and this actually helped us build out our first bamboo sneaker.
Wow. So, when you guys took a leap from the corporate job to Momo, so were there any fears, and how did you overcome them?
Of course, there were fears.
There were multiple fears, but I think that honestly, in my case, the fear of not doing something about your dream, or the risk of not being able to reach the fulfillment that you are looking for, was stronger than the other fears, and which is why the plunge happened in my case.
When I jumped off into entrepreneurship, I had a 8-month-old daughter at home, right? And we had EMIs on our heads, right? So not an easy decision at all at that life stage, of course. And Utkarsh has 2 daughters, so that was a lot more relevant for him as well. But at the end of the day, if you look at it, becoming an entrepreneur is an emotional decision, right? If you start doing calculations of what the payback is going to be of becoming an entrepreneur, that math will never work out, because you cannot predict how statistically you cannot predict how the startup is going to go and what your payout is going to be at the end of the day. But if you have the emotional drive and if you have the conviction to make things happen, and as Utkarsh said, if that is the fear of missing that out is more than anything else out there, um then it becomes a decision that you can take, and you can go and say, you know what, this can happen. From my perspective, it was very simple. Yeah. I've spent 15 years in corporate. I have all the degrees that anybody can speak of, right, with the IIT and the IIM, or you name whatever. Resume does not get better from there, right? So what is the downside? The worst case scenario, even if it does not work, you can always go back to whatever you were doing before, your entrepreneurial leap. So for me, the downside risk was very low. Thinking about it that way, it was only a matter of me jumping ship and trying something that I always wanted to try. And the fact that I found a co-founder at a time when this thought process was, on top of my mind. And it is very critical to find the right co-founder as well, right? So when entrepreneurship in general is a little bit of a lonely journey. If you're down, then you need a partner to become the oxygen. Utkarsh keeps having this analogy of nitrogen and oxygen, right? When you are the nitrogen and you're feeling low, you need the oxygen to come back to life, uh, right? And both of us come from a very different thought process as well. He comes from a design and consumer centric kind of a thought process. I come from a analytical, math and Excel driven thought process, strategy driven thought process. And ultimately, if those thoughts align in the right direction, then you've got things going, right? So that just happened. Those stars happened to align for me, and hence that entrepreneurial leap happened.
I think it's also important to be very optimistic. Like Ganesh said, the right co-founder is very, very important. This is some advice that I would share with anybody who wants to take the entrepreneurial journey. Please find a right co-founder, somebody with whom you can vibe well and you can find the chemistry is absolutely invaluable. The second part is being optimistic. Uh, I think both of us are optimists, hardcore optimists, and this is why entrepreneurship plunge was easier for us, especially when this whole COVID scenario came, and we were actually building footwear. A lot of people asked us the question that will you will people need footwear? But yes, people need footwear, and we have seen growth. Part of that is coming because people are taking to e-commerce. Part of it is coming because while they are not going to work, but they are walking in their apartment complexes, and they are going for grocery runs and things like that. So obviously, with one downside, some new opportunities open up, and the optimism is something that will really take your entrepreneurial ideas forward.
So I read somewhere that like when you guys like when ShopClues acquired Momo and you guys were working on like developing something new. So like at when you started, you really didn't know that you were going to build flatheads say after a period of 6, 7 or whatever that time period was. So did you have that kind of moment when you knew you want to do something but you didn't know what are you gonna build it? So was that time period kind of stressful for you, or how do you deal with that time period?
I think for us, when we moved to Shopclues, it was a great time because one of the things we learned there, number one, e-commerce, number two, how to handle growth at a scale. So these were two of the things that really kept us going through our journey there. I think there were a lot of challenges that Shopclues was trying to solve. One, from the point of taking e-commerce to the real India, the tier twos, the tier threes. Typically, as technology was penetrating, how to go there. So this was something that really kept us going, and we enjoyed the journey primarily because it was once again a sort of a entrepreneurial push. Both of us had independent portfolios to work on. I was working on the entire platform. Ganesh built out a merchant ecosystem. So I think in that sense, it really went well. It was absolutely not stressful, but it was a whole lot of learning and exploring new areas that we had not dealt with in the past.
Mhm. So Utkarsh, like if you were to like say start all over again now, what will you do differently?
If I were to start all over again, probably I would get faster to where I want to be. So that's the only thing I would change. But I think pieces of the journey in terms of making sure that you are observing the customer well, figuring out the real needs. These are something that are non-negotiable. I would definitely repeat it. In terms of building collaborations, in terms of being fast to make some decisions, I think these are a couple of things that I would change. I would probably not wait for all the data to be there before taking the decision or making the calls. That's what I can think of.
Okay, so my next question would be, at this point when entrepreneurship is booming, we have this kind of thing that okay, we need funding. How important do you think is funding? Like a lot of when I talk to a lot of fellow friends of starting their own businesses, everyone just comes up with okay, no, you need to pitch, you need to pitch. So do you think that funding is really that important, or should you focus on building the product first?
I honestly think that funding is not a goal in itself, right? First of all, you need to figure out what the problem is that you're solving, and what is the need that you're trying to address. And if you are able to build something uh, that can actually have legs in the market, that fits the market, the product market fit that we are talking about is there, then funding can actually help you accelerate what you're already building, right? So that is what funding should be about. um, if you're looking for funding as a means for for kicking things off on day one, that's a hard sell, right? Because uh, not only do you yourself have to build conviction, you also have to build conviction among investors who have not even seen the product out there, right? So that's a hard sell for sure. uh, According to me, if you are able to build a business that is as close to sustainability as possible, and funding helps you accelerate that growth, helps you hire the right people, helps you build the right product and get to market faster, and accelerate the process of getting to your whatever milestone that you want to get to as a business, it is an enabler, then that's the way to look at it, right? Otherwise, funding standalone, if you say, if you have to launch something you have to get funding, that's not the right way to think about it at all. We have raised our own funding both at Momo as well as Shopclues. uh, Shopclues, they did their large billion-dollar valuation fundraise as well, and now in Flatheads we have raised our angel round. It has always been about saying, you know what, this is the journey, this is the objective, and the money will be utilized to do two or three specific things along the journey, and that's the reason why we are raising funding.
So my final two questions to you would be, how important do you think was consistency and the spirit of not giving up important in your own journey?
Consistency, I think, is very important. One of the things that me and Ganesh always say is that get up, dress up, and show up. So, being consistent in terms of what you do and making sure that your discipline is right and your focus is right is something that is once again uh, one of the prime things for entrepreneurship. Number one, belief. Number two, willingness to go out there consistently and execute to that focus and that dream is something that one must really focus on. And consistency in terms of how you look at numbers, how you look at data, and how you make the right decisions. Also consistency in being able to make sure that you are conducting the right set of experiments and you are not stopping in terms of pushing the envelope. I would say really important from an entrepreneurial point of view. What was your second point actually?
The second point was actually this only, that how
Not giving
important
up.
is
How
not giving
important
up.
is not giving up? I think the answer to that lies in the optimism. You must truly believe, and you must make sure that if there is something that is not going right, then is it correctable? You must look at all the aspects, and yeah, giving up is, I think, definitely not something that you. So the way we look at entrepreneurship is that are you truly believing? Have you checked your proposition thoroughly? And if you've checked your proposition thoroughly and you believe that it is going to happen, then the only question that remains is: are you the people who are going to make it happen, or is somebody else going to be? So in that sense, I think giving up is definitely uh, not an option.
Sure. giving up is a very interesting perspective, right? So I would say even if whatever you're doing as an entrepreneur is not working at all, right? There is a fine line being completely tied to the idea that you have, right? And then saying it is not working at all. I'm giving up, versus saying instead of being tied to the solution, can you be tied to the problem? Can you be tied to what the market wants? And once you've identified a need and you know that the need is real, uh, then there are multiple ways of solving that need, right? Of addressing that need. If you're not tied to your solution and then say, you know what, maybe this is not the right solution, maybe there is another solution out there which can be tried out, uh, then it is not about giving up. It is about pivoting and trying to do something else that actually solves that need, and getting to that point. As an entrepreneur, there are a million things that are beyond your control, right? The environment out there, government regulations, COVID, for example, happens that completely disrupts industries across the world, right? These are things that you cannot control at all. But you can always, what is under your control is how you are addressing what you are doing out there in the market, right? If this specific proposition of yours is not working out, go and do something else. Go and try a different way of addressing the same need, and someday that will hit. Maybe it is a timing issue. Maybe you wait for 6 months and then hit it again. Maybe that is something that will happen. It is just a perspective of looking at things. That is part of optimism, right? It is saying no, no, no. It is I'm not turning completely cynical and pessimistic about the whole thing. I'm just waiting for the time to come, and that is when it will happen. I just need to get up and show up every day to make do things until that moment comes, right? So that is critical.
Mindset shift, actually. Okay, so the last question is a piece of advice you would give to the youth out there or the people just starting their journeys.
A piece of advice, if you would ask me, number one, find the right co-founder, find the right team. And initially, when you are looking to see whether your idea is uh, working or not, make sure that you don't leave any stone unturned in the number of experiments that you want to do. Even if it is half cooked, don't